Welcome to the Effin Alchemy Podcast, a safe space for each other and you, our fellow alchemists, created through authentic vulnerability, respect, honesty, and trust. By working through our day-to-day experiences together and being transparent and relatable, we invite you to take comfort in where you currently are in your journey, knowing you are exactly where you're meant to be, you are seen, and you are never alone. Hi, I'm Cate, claircognizant woo goddess of Violet Feather Alchemy, bringing you downloads from the spiritual world.
And I'm Amy, audacious empowerment queen of Effin Creative, daring you to unleash your creatrix. This is the Effin Alchemy Podcast,
where vulnerable synergy begets effin magic.
Episode 5. Is it intuition in my pocket, or is fear happy to see me?
Hello, alchemists. Today we'll be discussing how to discern your intuition from your fear. This question comes up a lot, asking, is this my intuition guiding me, or am I being driven by fear? Let's make some magic. So how do we discern intuition from fear?
I have no idea. Just kidding. That is an interesting topic because when I'm talking about like what paralyzes me or what keeps me from moving forward or taking action, it's usually fear-based for sure. And that voice being really loud, really chattery, really rapid, really anxiety-driven of things that haven't even come to pass and what if scenarios and all of that, where your intuition voice is very calm, very collected, very even keel, very quiet sometimes. Actually, most of the time, it's pretty quiet. And letting those racing thoughts like have their say and then be like, all right, cool. Like go have a cookie, go sit down. Like we got this, right? When you can get quiet and when you can focus and think about, all right, I've heard all these external things or, thinking about these different scenarios that haven't even happened. First thing asking is like, one, is this even true? Intuition really loves like yes or no questions. At least mine does. Loves yes or no questions. So first off asking like, is this even true? Most of the time it's not. In fact, 99% of the time it's not true. And connecting that feeling in your body. But when the answer is yes, or when the trajectory of like, should I make this move or should I go in this direction? When that answer is yes, before you even finish asking the question, it's already a resounding yes. Like it doesn't even give you a chance to finish asking what you want to know because one, you already know that it is or is not. And like I look for a lot of either validation or looking to the past of things that have happened and well, that's going to, happen again, or this could happen, etc. But when I sit down and get quiet and I'm still and I ask the right questions, I'm given the answer in a calm way that makes me feel calm. And then that racing factor like isn't even a part of it. It's like, it's very confident. It's very calm. It's even somewhat curious. Like, yeah, like what if? What if in a good way, not if in a what if in a catastrophic way.
Kind of like how Mel Robbins says, what if it all works out?
Yes.
What if it all works out?
What if it's all fine? Yeah. And that your intuition isn't going to steer you, in the wrong direction. Like it's your inner compass, it's your inner knowing, it's your inner guidance, it's your higher self, all of those things. It just gets annoying that you have to be so quiet and so tuned in to hear it. Because, like, if there's any other resounding, interference, it's it's hard to discern between the two at times.
It can be. And silence as humans can be very hard, especially if you have a monkey mind, right? It's hard to clear out the chatter, to make space for silence, to be able to have that discerning factor in that. But I will agree with you that fear is emotionally charged. I know that seems like an oversimplified statement because fear is an emotion, but when you feel like you're making a decision out of fear, you're experiencing emotion, and that emotion is fear. Whereas intuition, if you think of like a lake on a non-windy day and how it's just got that mirror like glass finish and how it's just steady and undisturbed, it's kind of almost like a neutral state of making a decision out of intuition. Like it's not emotionally charged. Like you said, it just kind of is. For me, the way that I discern intuition is it's more of like a push versus a pull. If I'm being pushed towards something, or if I feel like I'm being pushed towards something or forced towards something, that's my fear talking, like, oh shit, I better do this because if I don't, then XYZ. So I look at more like, am I feeling like I'm pushed, or am I feeling like I'm being pulled towards something? And for me, when it's my intuition, it's like, it's a relentless pull towards something. I don't want to use nagging, but it kind of is relentless in that way, right? It keeps eating at you or knocking, on your door, and at first it knocks softly, and then it starts to get a little bit louder, and then it starts banging, and it's like, let me in. But I look at it as intuition I'm being pulled towards something, and that pull has the magnetism with it. So if I'm really feel like I'm being called or pulled to do something, and I start following that, then all of the things that kind of go along with facilitating that start to magnetize to me and my efforts and my decision making, so that I'm being supported on that pull towards going towards the best possible decision for myself. Whereas fear, it feels very different like that. It feels like you're being like a tidal wave is swooping over you and you have no control over it, and you feel like you're being forced into doing something. It just feels kind of icky on the inside, like, I don't want to be doing this. And that's a really simple question that if you do have, any kind of question about whether it's fear or whether it's intuition, it's just ask yourself, do I want to be doing whatever it is that has come up for me? And sometimes that can just be the best starting point for that discernment of that, is to kind of figure out, do I want to be doing this? And then go from that point. But I think once you start to really get in tune with yourself, it's a practice just like anything else. But I think over time, the two feelings, whereas maybe if you have been a little bit inexperienced, and it can be kind of a blurry or fine line telling the difference between the two, it becomes more polarized the more aware you become and the more practice you get at the discernment between the two. It becomes like, oh yeah, I'm feeling very, very pulled or attracted to doing this thing. Or, oh, I feel like I'm being pushed and I feel like I'm being forced, and this is very uncomfortable, and this doesn't feel aligned with who I am or what my beliefs are, or, just misaligned in some way with either your being or your actions.
I even use it for like invites to, social gatherings or what have you. Like if I know that something is meant for me to go and arrange it so I can be there or whatever, asking my question. And I even do the exercise. It sounds so dumb, but like I'll stand with both feet planted on the ground and kind of close my eyes, take a couple breaths, center, and then ask myself, like, is it the right move to go to this place or do this thing or whatever? And my body like will literally either lean forward or lean back with, again, before I even finish asking the question. And I'm able to make that decision based on intuition versus being like, oh, well, if I go, then XYZ will happen. Or, if I don't go, XYZ won't happen or will happen. There's just like, I don't have to kind of get involved into those scenarios because I can, when I'm in that mode, like I can be very plugged in and very attuned to it and very aware of it to where I'm getting those messages pretty easily. And I'm able to use that as like magnetism. Like, what is it pulling me towards? Is it physically pulling me towards doing this thing or saying yes to this opportunity or, whatever it is? Or is it like literally repelling you? Like, it's pushing you away from it. It's giving you the icky feelings. It's giving you the weird emotions. Like, so it's easier to discern it when you are in a calmer state, but it's really hard when you're already in a fear state of mind or emotion to discern the two because you're so wrapped up in that.
You're so in your
swirling
head.
Vortex of like fight or flight, and that kicks in all your lizard brain and all the things, right? So you have to find a way to bring yourself into a space where you can then discern between the two. Because when you are resonating in fear, intuition is like, it might as well just be muted. Like you cannot hear it at all.
You're not going to be able to hear it.
So you have to be able to bring it down back to a place where you're centered and you're calm, or you're taking breaths, or you're, able to clear your head just a little bit. Then it has a clear voice. And again, it's not very loud unless you're like
sometimes
straight
it can
up
be.
fucking ignoring it and it's like kicking down your fucking
exactly.
door.
Then
like,
it's screaming.
But in the beginning stages of it, it's pretty gentle.
Yeah.
And I think that gentleness being that it also is moving you from a place of love, fear not coming from love. I mean, it's coming from
fear,
wherever it comes from.
Fear.
Wherever that, ingrained emotion is from, that we're born with. It's like, the basic ones to keep us alive, right?
Correct.
So it's when your survival skills are kicking in to run from the bear that's trying to eat you or the lion that's chasing you and all that thing. Like we've all heard that analogy, but
I mean, that's all valid, but that's not what it is.
Exactly. Yeah, like the bear is not chasing you if you're going to go to, a certain event or something. Like there's no bear that's going to get you, but your brain doesn't know the difference between the two. So it's also having the awareness and being, again, 30,000 foot view of I can take a step back. I can look at this from the holistic perspective and not get pulled into the swirling vortex of anxiety, fear, freaking out, racing thoughts, looped thoughts, etc.
Yeah, for sure. And I think something interesting that you touched on, but that I'll go ahead and elaborate on just a little bit, is intuition does not intellectualize, right? Like it's not an in your brain thing. Like you can't rationalize intuition. It's totally different. So if you find yourself like, I mean, this phrase, but if you find yourself mental masturbation over something, like you keep swimming around over and over in your head and you're obsessing about it in your head, understand that that's not intuition. That is your brain and likely a fear response trying to take over, trying to help you rationalize it so you feel safe.
Yep.
And anytime you're trying to feel safe, that means you're not inherently safe, or at least that's not what your brain is registering. So it's pretty safe, pardon the pun, it's pretty safe to put that into the fear-based category. Mm-hmm. So intuition is not intellectualizing a decision or information. It is a pure receipt of that information. Intuition doesn't have to be processed. It's intuition and the information stands as it's given. It doesn't have to be analyzed in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's clear.
It's clear.
Yep.
So has there been an instance recently for you where you were having a difficult time discerning, or maybe you've made like a fear-based decision that didn't turn out very well recently that you want to share about. I know I've had one relatively recently, but if you have anything that you wanted to, that you wanted to share.
So I teeter back and forth, right? Like, and this goes into a little bit of the yogic world and talking about the doshas and states of being, right? So there's vata, pitta, and kapha, right?
Yep.
And I don't know how to like get this wrapped up in like a 10-second explanation, but 3 states of being. Vata being associated with like air, and pitta, fire, kapha, earth, right? Let's kind of like blanket it like that.
Yeah.
Makes more sense.
I think that's a simplified way of saying that, yes.
So your 2 states of being are like what you were when you were born, what your state was, and then kind of like your current state of wherever you are now. And they're pretty closely related. They don't shift too much. Me personally, always been super high vata. So like air, creativity, cold, things like that. Cold, not in like an emotional sense, but just like I'm physically cold like all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right? So to me, what I associate that with is also like anxiety and fear and like a feeling of unrest or not being grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know for me personally, when I'm not feeling grounded and my vata is through the fucking roof, I can't make decisions based on intuition because my fear and my anxiety and my monkey brain, as you put it, I was like, oh my God, I'm monkey brain like all the time. But I know when it's really high and I'm not taking the time to ground myself, I don't make decisions based on intuition because I can't even hear my intuition.
Yeah.
It's so muted that my vata, and I had a teacher explain it to me, like vata is a bully. And it is. It's a bully for letting anything else in, and it can keep you in that state of mind. I have to work really hard to balance that out and bring it down so that my fear and my anxiety and that chattering and that raciness is not making up 1,000 different scenarios based on one little tiny decision. And I can't make a decision based in fear because, one, it's paralyzing. Think about when you're like really scared, like you're frozen, like you can't move, right?
Yeah.
So I have to make a conscious effort to get myself grounded, quiet my brain, quiet that monkey, put some duct tape on the monkey's mouth and give it some bananas and go have a snack. But fear likes to go have, I like to give my fear snacks. I'm like,
go have a break.
You need cookies, you need
sit in
bananas,
the corner and have a break.
like what kind of snacks do you need? Like go have a seat and watch your show and have your banana and just chill out because it can get so riled up and keep me from making any decision, even the smallest thing. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to a big decision, i.e., what do I want to do with my life? What's my next move? What's my purpose? All of those big questions. I can't even begin to tap into that because it's so muted. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I'm going to make a quick reference to the tarot with this because in the tarot, the suit of swords, which is associated with intellectual abilities and taking action and very like cerebral stuff, like in the head, right? Like
it's very vata.
It's very vata, but the element that's associated with the swords in tarot is air, and that's associating the brain or being in your head with air is very appropriate. And I just think it's a cool kind of link to make there, and just being aware, like especially for you who's heavily vata, that acknowledging that and then really focusing on bringing that back down with regards to intuition, because again, intuition is not being in your head. It's the opposite of that, right? It's not a engineered brain process, right? It's not. It's very much it's an inherent knowing. It's not a brain generated knowing. I thought I'd throw that in there because it's interesting to look at.
It totally is. And I feel like fear is the one like putting nasty notes on your locker.
Yeah. It's the mean kid at school.
It is. It's a total dick. It's just...
It's trying to keep you alive, but it's going about it the most
it just
mean way possible.
It's like tough love to the like nth degree that it just is, it sucks. But like, no, I love that. And I love also thinking about them being opposites, right? So if fear is kind of up in your head and sort of, that airiness quality to it, like wind and like, even like the racing of wind, or like when wind hits you in the face really hard, like how that kind of that bite is.
Yeah.
And intuition being like a very grounded, like very centered, like at your root, at your core. It's stable, it's consistent, it's clear, it's calm, it's heavy, but not like in weight, just heavy in groundedness.
Groundedness, yes.
And when you can come to that state, and that's where like physically sitting in lotus or, like literally grounding your body, putting 2 feet on the ground, go stand in the grass, whatever, when you can embody that groundedness, that's when that voice is like, all right, here you go. Here's the answer.
Yeah.
This is what I've been trying to tell you. And you're like, oh.
Yeah, it's almost like giving your intuition a space to breathe. Like it has the room, the levelness needed to deliver itself to you, right? It's very difficult to receive something if you don't have a stable hand to receive it in, right?
And it's almost opposite. Like you can't go to intuition's door and just be like, hey, banging on the door. Like, hey,
it doesn't work that way either.
Hey, will you listen? I have a question. Can you answer my question? It's like, nah, bitch, you need to fucking calm down. Come back to me when you calm down. Like, then we can have a talk. But like right now, no, it's not going to happen. You're not in a place to receive what I have to tell you anyways. So you've got to bring it down 1,000, come back to me when you're chilled out, and then we'll have a talk. But until then, it's not happening.
Yeah. I think it's also important to acknowledge that sometimes, our intuition indicates something that isn't really what we want to hear. So I know you were talking about like sometimes the answer will come in before you're even done asking the question, right? And sometimes it's like it's something that that's really important to you and carries a lot of weight, and you have chosen to put a lot of stock in it. And you're like that question, and it's like no, and you're just like, or maybe it's, ask the question and then yes. or it tells you yes. And you're like, man, I really don't want to do that. Like, but that, again, that's just your fear brain kicking in. But I think it's important to be equally as open to processing the information after you've been open to receiving the response. Like, after you receive your response, you have to be open to accepting and processing what that response is. I mean, are you going to choose to listen to it? Or are you going to choose to be like, well, fuck that shit. I'm just not going to listen to my intuition and go ahead and bulldoze forward. It's really all in what you do with it. So in the very recent past, I ended up making a kind of important decision based out of fear. And I'm really good at discerning between intuition and fear. My issue was that I ended up making a fear-based decision because I didn't have trust in the process. And so it was my lack of trust in the process that ultimately I fell back on making a fear-based decision. And lo and behold, as I went through this experience with this decision that I made, I quickly had to back myself out of it. And it's not worth not listening to your intuition, because you can end up spending a lot of energy either backing something out or dealing with fallout from fear-based decisions, or undoing damage or causing damage to somebody else, maybe not intentionally. And it can sometimes be, not always, of course, but it can sometimes be costly in time, energy, maybe even money to make fear-based decisions, because just by inherent nature, they're not aligned with who you are. And so ultimately, even if they do maybe happen to serve you in a very, very short term, ultimately they're misaligned. So they're not going to end up serving you in the long term. And, the longer you would wait after making a fear-based decision or go along with your fear-based decision, that could cause more and more expense in all of the ways, So it's just not worth it. Even if, you're listening to your intuition and it's an answer you don't want to hear, it's best to just not argue with it, because like you said, your intuition's never wrong, right? I wasn't willing to accept the answer that I got, and I went against it and made the fear-based choice in my situation. And it was not a favorable choice for me. A lot of things were kind of going sideways during that point in time. It wasn't good on any front. And had I just listened to my intuition and not fell back on a fear-based decision, I probably would have saved myself some energy and definitely some headache. So even if it's not what you want to hear, always go with what your intuition tells you. And if you have to take a little bit more time to process what your intuition has told you, instead of just making a super quick decision, then take that time. Sometimes we don't have the luxury of that, and we have to make on the spot decisions out of nowhere. And sometimes we just make not the most beneficial decisions for ourselves. And sometimes that happens and it's a learning experience. I'm speaking to more you're sitting down with something and you're getting quiet and you're asking and you get an answer that you don't want and you decide to make a fear-based decision anyway. That's specifically what I'm speaking to here about that. It's probably not the most beneficial thing to go against what your intuition has clearly told you. It's just probably not.
Yeah, and it's not logical most of the time.
No, it's not.
It definitely doesn't follow any sort of logic in the realm of existence that we live in. And it can look crazy. It can look erratic. It can look nuts to somebody on the outside being like, what are you doing? And why did you choose to do this or completely change that or whatever, whatever path it kind of puts you on. And it can look erratic as fuck.
Yeah.
But that's what's crazy about it is even in that mode, you're like, no, I'm so grounded and I just know that this is fine or it's meant for me or, I'm following this path for a reason, even though it makes no sense from the outside looking in. And sometimes even from the outside looking out, you're like, I don't fucking know. I'm just doing it because that's what feels right and what's pulling me in that direction. Yeah. And I think sometimes even if you get in a spot where you are stuck, and you're not making a decision based on fear, yes, you can make this decision based on fear. Yes, you cannot make this decision based on fear. But what happens when you don't make any decision because you're stuck in fear? Your intuition is trying to move the needle. It's trying to move you in a direction, like you said, the push and the pull. It's trying to pull you out of that stuckness to propel you forward on the path that it's, sometimes kicking and screaming, dragging you along too. But at first, and it's again, looking back and saying okay, what are those points in my life when I made the decision, and I'm talking more big decisions, right? Life-changing kind of things where I made it based on intuition. I didn't make it based on fear, even though it was scary when I was going through it. Mm-hmm. It felt, I was fearful and I was scared because of the circumstances, but not because I felt deep in my core that this was what was driving me.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So looping back to what you kind of said, the inability or the fear paralysis, the inability to make a decision. But that in and of itself, not making a decision is making a decision, right? And so thereby it's...
And you know that I know that you know that we know that you know that I know.
Exactly. No, but therefore, not making a decision is a fear-based decision. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's
totally
like a circular
is.
thing. So the only way out of making fear-based decisions is to listen to your intuition and trust is the key piece here. Trust that it is always accurate and always going to lead you to the most beneficial place. It's that trust piece is what it can be the very challenging part, especially if you have any kind of issues with trust with yourself or with other people or your circumstances. That can be super hard.
Do you put that in the same category as surrender?
It can. I definitely think that there's an overlap there. I think that while surrendering can be a conscious practice, definitely, listening and acting upon your intuition is more of a trust, which is more of an active thing. Whereas surrendering is an allowance, you are releasing and allowing something. Whereas trusting is an active thing, just like loving is an active thing. Love is a verb, trust is a verb. I'd like to just make that distinction, but I think that that's a really good point to bring up. That in addition to trust, you also have to be able to surrender. I think that that's a really important piece of this. And this is a whole nother topic that we can of course dive into. But I think with regards to this specific topic of intuition, I think that the activeness of trust is what the key piece is there. Whereas surrender, while you can consciously, obviously surrender to things, I think it's more of a not passive, but a hands-off, has a hands-off energy to it.
It's almost like with fear, like the antidote to fear would be trust. I mean, it's love also, but like if you're in a state of fear and you're afraid about a decision or a particular outcome, like the antidote to that is to trust. And with intuition, it's not necessarily an antidote. It's more like they're sisters, not twins, right? Like surrender and intuition kind of go hand in hand, where you have to kind of like, if you're listening to your intuition, like there's a certain semblance of like letting go, that it's all meant for you. It's all going to be okay. It's all going to work out. Where with fear, in order to kind of get out of that swirling vortex of crazy, more or less, you have to trust that, how am I trying to say this? Like, you can't be in fear and trust at the same time. But you can be in surrender and in your intuition at the same time.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of like to just touch on that just a smidge bit more. Surrender, for me, when applying surrender to intuition, is surrendering your expectations and letting go of your expectation, because intuition, the information your intuition delivers to you, may not be what you want to hear or may not be what you had expected. Like if you ask a question, you're like, oh, this is probably going to go this way. And then if you actually sit and listen and just allow it to come to you, it's the surrendering of the expectation for me when talked about with intuition. That's kind of how those two fit together with that. That's where the surrender comes in, because the activeness that we just talked about is just that. It's activeness, where this is a letting go. And when I think of letting go with regards to intuition, it's of the expectations that may be swirling around whatever it is that you're working with.
Yeah.
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 Yes. It's the yes cat. Yes. Want a treat? Yes. Do you remember that?
Love that.
Stupid
Yes.
meme? It's so dumb.
It's great.
It's on repeat for like 3 hours straight on YouTube. You want a treat? Yes. Yes. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it totally is. I'm going to chew on that for a while.
Yeah. Expectations are something that I've worked a lot with in my life. And because for a lot of my life, it's been something I've held for myself. Like, I have really high expectations of myself, and I have tended in the past to hold really high expectations of everybody else around me. I don't care what level you're at. I don't care who you are. It's like, if you're not the same level as Cate, then then you're going to be a disappointment inherently.
Then
yeah.
you can fuck right off.
Yeah. Well, but I don't operate in that space anymore.
I know.
I don't. And it took a really long time for me to figure out how, and then experiencing the benefit of letting go of expectations of particularly others. I'm still working on letting go of expectations for myself. That will probably be a lifelong process. But specifically of others, recognizing that no one else is me. I'm the only me that there is. There's nobody else that's going to operate in the exact same manner, or have the same exact priorities, or have the exact same skill set, or have the same abilities as I do. So me expecting somebody to operate within my same parameters, I finally just realized that's insane. Like, that's stupid as fuck, because nobody is me. And so once you can grasp that and truly internalize that, hey, no one else is you, and if you're holding other people to you standards, that's going to end up in a lot of disappointment. And it doesn't just apply to upholding others to your standards, but what about the standards that you either consciously or subconsciously have placed upon other people? Like, oh, hey, there's this guy I'm dating, and he's supposed to be my boyfriend. And, in my brain, my expectations of what my boyfriend should look like should be da. And it may not be something that you consciously do, but on a subconscious level, you're still holding that person to that set of expectations. And that's not gonna end up at anything but frustration on your end and disappointment, and really treating somebody, in this particular example, a boyfriend, like, that's treating them unfairly because they're not you and they didn't set those expectations. It's like you've imposed or projected this set of, how you need or want them to be on them. And then when they don't meet that, you're getting mad at them. It's like, what the fuck right do you have to do that to somebody else? And once I started to figure that out, a lot of things shifted for me. And releasing expectations on other people and just allowing them to show up can sometimes be one of the most rewarding things, because that person, you're reframing your attention on what are the positive, amazing benefits that person naturally bring to you, instead of focusing on, they didn't do such and such, and I feel like offended because they didn't do such and such. Why not reframe that and be like, oh, well, I'm not going to hold expectations over this person's head. I'm not going to project my expectations on them. Let's see what they bring to the table. What an amazing gift that is. Like, and I've noticed my relationships greatly shift since I've stopped taking things personally and not taking other people's actions as an affront and kind of dropped the expectation there. And now some people have just kind of gone by the wayside, but others, like the ones that are, they're really close to me. And since I've kind of taken that hands-off expectation approach, like I'm not, projecting that shit on them anymore. They've actually, in my eyes, they've bloomed into something totally fucking different. And the ways that they're not homogenous through my lenses, the way that they're individuals and have showed up to my perception differently because I haven't projected my perception onto them, has been really quite fucking cool to see. Hey, this person is actually like this. They're not like this. Like, hey, this person does do these amazing things that I never saw with my homogenized glasses on before. My homogenized glasses of expectation, we'll just call them. You know what I mean? It's really quite amazing when you can take your hands off and just, here we go again, and just be a witness. Right? Witness what somebody's going to do. Witness what they want to offer you. Witness how they navigate through your life. Mm-hmm. It can be really eye-opening, and it's for sure going to shift relationships because you're changing the way you're engaging with those people.
Such a good reminder as a parent.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because the idea of kind of being a shepherd, not this is a carbon copy of you.
Oh, yeah.
This is not just like a genetic soup output of you and your counterpart.
Yeah.
However it got there.
Yeah.
And being a mom, like, and going through the birthing process, like, you literally are a connection point from some other realm to this earth side.
Yes,
right?
the material, yeah.
You're a portal, more or less. I mean, for simple explanation of it, right? And it's not that you didn't take part, and this is a big, like, surrender thing too, right? When you're growing a human alien baby inside of you, you're completely surrendered to all things that are happening to make that happen. But what I'm getting at is this being is coming through you. They're not, and yes, they do have genetic, makeup that is a part of them from your, lineage and things like that. But putting the expectations on them that they will be and think and act and interpret and feel the same way about our existence as you do, or even a small thing, just, yeah, I love that, kind of taking off your, what do you call them, the HGEs, the homogenized glasses of expectation off to truly see them for who and what they are. And yeah, like they're part of your family and a part of you in some capacity, but like they're their own fucking people.
Yeah.
They're their own people. They're having their own experience. Your job not necessarily being to impose your expectation of what their life experience is going to be, but to be more of a shepherd and place them in a place where they can have opportunity to help them grow in whatever that looks like for them. And it's real easy to get caught up in your expectations of your children, especially the older they get, right? Like when they're little, it's not so much, but as they grow and they get older, your vision in your head of what your children are going to be like and you expect them to be, and even thinking of yourself as a child, right? Like in your parents' eyes, what expectation they had on you, and you being your own person and you having your own experience and you having your own interpretation of your existence, and being reminded of that just really hit because yeah, it's just a good reminder. we try to parent and be conscious of that and try to shepherd our kids as best that we can, but sometimes you're just like, fuck, like, can you just fucking do the thing, right? Because it drives you nuts, but that's only because it's my expectation of it.
Yeah.
It's my interpretation of how these things should be, sitting down, and I'll give you a real life example. Sitting down for dinner, when we have dinner together, like in my head, I'm like, everyone sits down, we all eat at a normal pace. Everyone has
talking to each
lovely
other,
conversation.
smiling.
And then we clear the table and the kitchen is clean when it's all said and done. And that is my expectation going into it. And then, like 2 seconds in, one is standing on top of the table, throwing food at the dog. The dog's licking the floor. The other dog is like, trying to eat food off the table. The other kid is dribbling a basketball, bouncing around the kitchen, throwing it into the wall, into the door, into the ceiling, knocking shit over. And, I'm sitting there just like trying to eat my food and like keep it together. And then some, Andrew's just in the mix of it all too, and it's utter fucking chaos.
Yeah.
And it drives me nuts. I'm like, why can't you fucking people just sit down and eat a goddamn meal and like talk and whatever, and like, AJ, tell me about your day, and he's like, it was good, and I'm like, oh, like, I need a little more than that. Like, I have to ask the right questions. Like, I can't ask how was your day, I have to ask what happened today.
Yeah.
Because if I don't ask it in that way, like, I get one word answers. But yeah, it's my expectation around like, oh, dinner time should be like this. And it never is. Like,
No.
It never fucking is. And it's only me left feeling like stupid and frustrated and just like so irritated to fuck, because I'm like, you people are not doing the thing that I need. I just, I need you to sit down and eat dinner in a normal way and take, the time to be together and do this. And like, we're all together, but it's just like, it's fucking chaos.
Yeah.
And, a reminder of that as well, of like, just fucking like, let it go. It doesn't matter. It's fine. There shouldn't be any expectation. Is everyone getting food in their mouth? Okay, great. That should be my only expectation.
Everybody's fed.
Are
We're accomplished for tonight.
Are your
We're done.
basic fucking needs met? Then we're good, So
Well,
that's like a silly example of it, but I think
it's a very real example
It
of
is,
it.
and
It's a
it
very
translates-
down-to-earth, real example of exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it translates further into that, right? With, a relationship with a partner, or a relationship with parents or friends or coworkers or clients or colleagues or any of that, right? Like, your expectation of what this person should do and be and say and act and be to you. And that's kind of that old adage of like, well, if you don't like something, it's just because you're seeing something you don't like in yourself, right? Like, and you're like, fuck off with that because fuck you.
Yeah.
Right? But if you think about it in that lens, it's like, my expectation of this person to meet this need isn't being met. I'm the one left feeling frustrated about it, right? Like, and I think about our dearly departed Carrie Fisher, who I loved very much. She was amazing. But she had this thing where she said, like, resentment is, I don't know if she said it, but it was like in one of her one-man show kind of thing. And she's like, resentment is like drinking poison and wishing for the other person to die.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like expectation kind of falls into that camp, because it's like, I'm getting so worked up about this thing, expecting you to have whatever experience that I'm putting out there, projecting onto you. And when you're not fulfilling my expectation, like, I'm left with the fucking emotion of it.
Right. It's only damaging you.
Right.
But I think there's an important piece of this to also embrace and really honor and really look at as well. So why is it that you need or have XYZ expectation? Just because you're having it doesn't make it bad.
Because you sit down and you eat your dinner together.
Well, but why is that important to you? Why, if you trace that lineage back, why is that so important to you that you have that expectation and it hurts, or you're disappointed when that expectation doesn't get met? And this is where you can loop this back around to intuition, is sitting with that. What is the real peel the onion. What is the real reason? How far does that go back into? What's the why behind the why that disappointment occurs when you hold that expectation? Why do you hold that expectation? Where does that disappointment lie? And then sit with that and allow your intuition to bring that back to you, because it will. You know what I mean? Like that's a deep circular process to work through there.
It is.
So that's definitely...
do you want to pull on this thread?
Yeah.
Question?
Yeah.
Undo the sweater?
Yeah. How far do you want to destroy the sweater?
The sweater song.
Pull this thread as I walk away. That's or sit in my sweater yarn ball. Either way, whatever.
Good old Weezer.
Yeah,
Words
Weezer.
of wisdom. Yeah. No, it totally is that.
Yeah. Yeah.
On any level, right?
Yes,
about anything.
I know about anything.
Fuck, now my expectation about like this, and like, well, where's that coming from?
Yeah. But if it's, I think there's a dividing line here, right?
Yes,
like,
for sure.
For the stuff that's really potent for you. Like if it's a really deep-rooted expectation that you have, let's say that your partner, it's really important to you and you hold them to the expectation that they'll call you whenever they get somewhere, like to make sure that they're safe. Well, there's a reason why you expect that to happen, because you want to know they're safe. Well, why do you want to know they're safe? Well, it could be any myriad of reasons. Maybe you've been lied to before. Maybe you've been cheated on. Maybe you had something horrible happen to somebody that was important to you. It could be a number of things, but rewinding that back, okay, I have this expectation because I was lied to in a previous relationship. Okay, so let's unpack that now. Like, what trauma is still left over from that, causing that expectation that you're bringing it forward into your current reality? And that's how you would go back and work through and dig through that. Like, if it's really something that you feel very strongly about, that it's an actual, when an expectation turns into a need, or maybe those lines are just a little bit blurred, whether you're not sure it's an expectation or need, like dig back and really figure out where that came from. And that's going to be a practice in distinguishing your intuition from your fear, because expectations and sometimes even needs can arise out of fear or fear-based something that's happened to you in the past. And then that's where you would go back and discern the difference between fear and your intuition. Why is it that you're holding these expectations? Is there a fear that's under there? Is there trauma you need to look at? What is it that you need to process to be able to let go or release the expectations that you have of others? Today we discussed how to discern your intuition from fear and how surrendering expectations can allow us to engage our intuition more effectively. We'd love to know what kind of indicators help you clearly evaluate which is which.
Until then, stay effin' magical. Ready to create more magic? For additional episodes and insights, go to effinalchemy.com. EFFINALCHEMY.com.